Question before we start. I'm getting texts from people. Is this watchable on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay, it did just go live. All right.
It's going to go up right now.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Brian.
And we are live right now.
Okay, everybody, thank you. Let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to extend a welcome to the board members, the administration, and the members of the community that have joined us tonight. This is a workshop of the Board of Education. The workshop is a defined term where we meet to discuss long-term strategies, drafts of budget, and whether or not to set or revise policies. This is not a meeting where we're going to reverse, change, or modify any decisions that were made by the coaches for this spring season. This is a forward-looking meeting focused on creating a healthy sports environment for our student athletes. I expect this meeting to be rather short as we begin the discussion of the concerns that have been repeatedly raised by our community over the years. We will also discuss some possible solutions and our process going forward. But before we begin, I'd like to take just a moment and pause because we do have a very strong high school athletic program, and we should celebrate how Joe Haven has provided such a great experience for our student athletes during this incredibly challenging time. This is that time to drop that email or text to Joe to say thank you for a job well done. I'm also amazed at the depth of our athletic programs, from tennis to golf to mountain biking to swimming, all the track and field programs, lacrosse, soccer, football, to name a few. It's really an amazing list given the size of our school. So when we consider whether to revise a policy, it touches on all of these programs. So it must be done thoughtfully, deliberately, and with transparency. So just to be clear, to reiterate one more time, there will be no motions, no votes, and no decisions made tonight. This is about starting a discussion on these very important topics. I acknowledge our timing is unusual, but questions have been raised over the years about the advanced placement policy and the other employment opportunities of our coaches. During my 5 years alone on the board, we have discussed these issues many, many times. And in fact, we established a committee before the pandemic to explore these concerns in depth. Roy will outline the current policies that we have identified that we would like to discuss tonight. He will also bring forward some options, some suggestions that will guide our discussion. I expect that the board's conversation tonight will enhance those options and probably identify areas for further discussion. We will continue this discussion at future meetings. Ultimately, if we decide to make revisions, and I do highlight if, they will be discussed at an open meeting of the board. They will go through 2 readings, i.e. 2 meetings that both will include public input. So everybody in our community will have a chance to participate in this conversation. That is critical to us. So with those remarks, Roy, I'd like to turn to you to start our conversation on the policies.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. I'm just going to go share my screen if I can find it in a moment. Just hang on with me for a second. Get rid of that, and I do this. So I think I had your slides first, Arlene, so I apologize for not showing them earlier while you were talking.
You can just jump over them.
Yep. So this is what you discussed tonight. So, you know, I as I begin, I just want to emphasize again some of the points that Arlene made that I think are really important. And that is, no one's out to get anyone tonight. No one's out to change any of the rosters or talk about getting rid of coaches or anything like that. We're really here to try to have a productive conversation about issues that have come up. I know since I've been in Bronxville, it's come up and it's come up in various times and in various ways. And it's certainly not due to any personal or individual agenda that anyone has. It's really something that we as a board need to clarify a bit and try to provide some leadership and direction to make sure we do well and get it right. And so, you know, athletics is really, the screen is black, you're telling me, huh? Sorry about that. I wonder why. Sorry, hold on one second, let me try again. I apologize. Let me just try that again. Sorry, folks. Share. Looks good on my screen. I don't know why you can't see it. Do you see it now at all? No? Sorry.
Still black.
Huh. This is where I need the tech support that I'm not getting here. Okay. No, no good?
No.
good. All right. Well, how about if I do without a screen share? Let's see. Let me see if this will work. No. Last time? No? No good?
Okay, do you want to send it to one of us and see if we can share it?
Yeah, I can try to do that. Well, Joe, you have it shared, and I think Arlene, you have it shared as well.
Has it changed? Okay.
Sent to Brian. How about if I send it to you real quick?
Sure.
Okay. I'll send it as an, you know what, hold on one second. I apologize, folks.
You're doing that just as a point of interest. I just rolled over my name and realized it said Spencer Thomas. And for those of you that have never met me, that would not be me. I'm Arlene Thomas, and Spencer is my son, who is a proud alum of this great school. Who
So
clearly
Brian, I just
knows
shared
my-
it with you from Google.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can get that or not, but
Pulling it right now.
okay. There we go. Thank you, Brian. So Brian, if you can go another one. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is where I was starting. And as I was saying, it's something I know that's been on our agenda for quite some time. And, you know, athletics is extremely, extremely important. Could you go up a slide, Brian? I think I went too many. Extremely important to the overall educational experience for our kids. And our goal is to have max participation and everybody have a good experience, while at the same time putting a competitive team on the field for at varsity levels. But as you can see here, this is what's on our website. And it talks about the importance of athletics and how it connects to the Bronxville Promise. And I think it's important to understand that we do value it. It's part and parcel to what we do with our kids. And it's really embedded within the Bronxville Promise. Next slide, Brian, please. So the two issues, or the two concerns that have come up over again and come up again tonight are the athletic participation process, the APP, which is when middle school, 7th and 8th grade students try out for one of the varsity level teams. And our current guidelines suggest that a priority is placed upon the participation of high school athletic teams by high school students. So therefore, high school students receive priority for participation on a high school team. And we don't want any high school students who wish to participate meaningfully to be cut from a high school team in favor of a middle school student. The feeling is that middle school students will have 4 years once they get to high school to participate and play at the varsity level. And unless it's there are obviously exceptions to this, which we've experienced from time to time when we have that exceptional athlete who really excels in a particular sport. And then if that is the case, there's a process that exists. So the coach let that director of athletics know that we have a particular high-level student. The director of athletics will get involved with the student and the parent, and together jointly along with the coach, they can make a decision about that particular child. So that's the intent of that policy, is to really try to make it a priority for high school students. However, again, we recognize that in certain times, in certain areas, that a 7th or 8th grader may be just an outstanding athlete. And certain sports also lend itself to that as well, such as skiing, mountain biking, some of those individual type sports where some of the younger kids can excel. So that's what we currently have. And as the board goes through the process of considerations, some options that should be considered. One is keep everything as it is. That's something that the board can certainly do. Don't make any changes and just make sure that this particular guideline is being enforced properly. Perhaps the board would like to consider providing further clarification on this. And one of the suggestions that I would ask for consideration on is that we limit the expectations for 7th and 8th grade students to play up one level. And what that means is if an 8th grader excels and passes the APP process and goes to the tryout, that they would be invited to play whatever the next level up is. If that means the JV team's the next level up from 8th grade, then that's what they would play. If it's a freshman team, in the case of like basketball, for example, they would play that, give them that experience with a high school athlete. Again, exceptions can be made for any super extraordinary athlete to jump up higher. And the third option that the board can certainly think about is to have no middle school student play any high school sports, period, to make it that cut and dry. Although I think in a small town like ours, that would be tough to do because we want to make sure we fulfill the rosters and can participate. So those are some of the options that I would let the board know that we should be considered as we go through the review process. Next slide, Brian. So as Arlene alluded to, I just want to emphasize again that this is not a new issue for us. In fact, over a year ago, a committee was formed by the then athletic director, Karen Peterson, to begin examining the issue of APP as well as the coaching issue as it relates to coaching outside of Bronxville in the club sports, and try to make recommendations so everybody's on the same page. And at the time, that committee consisted of Karen Peterson, a couple of parents, one of a coach representative, a board of ed member, and an athletic council rep. And they were asked to discuss and make recommendations regarding potential conflicts of having club coaches on our school staff. And they were making some good progress and just had some good discussions. However, the pandemic shut everything down before any final recommendations could be thoroughly discussed, vetted out, and put forth. And then we also have a transition to a new athletic director, Joe Haven. Next slide, Brian. So I thought it'd be interesting to share with you some of the excerpts from the committee's work prior to the pandemic on some of their discussion items that they had on their agenda. How are club sports, do they have a negative impact on school programs? Will this continue in the future to the point of further diminishing the interscholastic program, or will this trend reverse at some point? What is the ability of the district to attract and retain good coaches? If we cannot employ quality coaches, that serves to exacerbate the problem and drive more students to clubs rather than high school to receive quality coaching. There was also a survey done of area high school teams, which indicated a majority of the interscholastic coaches are involved at the club level. Next slide, Brian. They also discuss issues with potential club conflicts, whether they be perceived or real. It's not a problem for student athletes who try out make the club team, but it is perceived as a possible disadvantage to those athletes who do not make the team. And if we do employ coaches of club affiliation, how do we continue to monitor to make sure that no conflicts and communicate that to the community? And then what differences are there between club coaching and private instruction? Do we need a distinction to be made? What should it look like? What restrictions should we need to become contract language? And would there be distinction made between faculty coaches and district coaches? So connected to that, as the board looks at this, there are obviously some complex issues to examine, to review, and to sort out. Currently, I don't know that we have anything in policy written down about the hiring of coaches and affiliation to club teams, but I think it's time to really review that and make it clear so everybody's knows what we're doing. People can have input to the process here and make a good decision. So we can keep what exists. Certainly, we can try to provide further clarification on limits on club coaching versus Bronxville coaching, and maybe include something in writing that paid coaches, we would not allow paid individual coaching sessions with members on the team, similar to teachers who are restricted from tutoring the kids in their own classroom. We don't want it to be perceived that somebody's paying a coach through a private lesson to get an advantage to play on a particular team. So that's something that should be certainly considered. And again, on the extreme side would be that we would not allow anybody coaching in Bronxville coach a club, which I would certainly not recommend. Again, given the expansion of club activities and where they're at, I think that would be not a wise move on our part. It would be tough to get coaches if we were to do that. So these are kind of things that we need to wrestle with, consider as we move forward. Brian, I think that's it, right? In terms of slides, so you can get us back. Okay, so just to reiterate, the two main things that continually come up are the APP process and the potential conflict that exists with coaches and club activities. And one of the recommendations I would ask the board to consider is reinstituting a committee that has various constituent groups available to pick up where the committee left off, to do some vetting, and to make recommendations for consideration in addition to what the board might have to say as well.
Thank you, Roy, for setting that out. I'd like now just to open up to board members if you have clarifying questions of Roy or myself, or experiences that you've had in other school districts that you would like to share. Open up the floor for discussion. Don't be shy.
Roy, in that preliminary kind of study that Karen was doing, was there any statistics that said we're an outlier, or are we similar to other districts and on, kind of our rules if we have particular stringent rules?
Yeah, I I don't think we're an outlier, Mike. I mean, Joe would know better than I, because I know he's trying to get some data surveying not only Section 1, but other contacts that he has throughout the state. Based on my conversation with Joe regarding the APP process, most districts follow the state guideline on that, similar to what we do, or they don't have it at all, or they just say, I think there's 1 or 2 districts in our area that may just say no 8th graders, playing high school sports, period. But that tends to be a larger school, not a smaller school. And on the coaching side, Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that most districts have coaches that coach club as well.
Have we been able to find out if other districts have written policies regarding these issues that we could look at?
Joe, have you, I don't know if you've been able to do that at all yet?
So I reached out to other Section 1 athletic directors, asking a question, first of all, about APP, if there's any limitations. The limitations did not come back with, there's not a limitation yet that I've seen that comes out and says there's no 8th graders allowed on varsity. Club coaches, when you call around, most schools, especially in sports of soccer, lacrosse, now AAU basketball, they're saying that the majority of their coaches are either teachers or club coaches. But, they tend to lean for soccer and lacrosse, it tends to lean on the club side. AAU basketball sometimes is more affiliated with the school coaches. But other sports, the lacrosses and the soccers tends to be more associated with club sports.
But we haven't been able to find out any policies related to potential conflicts of interest?
I haven't found that one out yet, but I can send a simple email out and see if anybody has anything like that. I can do that very simply. I can send it to the whole state too. We're on a listserv. We can send it to everybody in the state to find out if anybody has any particular mentions in their hiring process about club or non-club activity type coaches.
So again, I also asked our attorney who represents Section 1 as well, that very question, and she wasn't aware of any districts that had that policy. The only thing that came close is the individual private coaching lessons, if you will, that there were policies against that in many districts.
Roy, last year when Karen had constituted that committee to look at the club coaching issue, she gathered a policy from Scarsdale where because of the structure of Scarsdale's youth rec league, they don't have club coaches at their high school level, their high school program, and Byram Hills is the same.
You're right, Tom. I forgot about that. I apologize. Thank you.
But those are just two
Yep.
that Karen was able to gather.
Correct. Yeah, I wasn't part of the committee, so I kind of catching up on some of these notes, and I did see that, so I apologize for not remembering that.
And just so people know, with that committee, not only was there, we were just beginning our discussions. I think we'd had one or maybe two, I think just one, as I recall, meetings. And there was no consensus about what to do. We were in the, if there is a problem, what is that problem stage? I note that as to the participation, I think it was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, Arlene, you and John, I'll defer to your recollections, but we had a very broad-based community committee. I think there might have been like 20 or 30 people on. And we had at least 4 meetings, as I recall, and we came up with the existing policy with the specific desire that it be flexible and that we don't set our feet in concrete and that a rule of reason and good faith govern. And I still believe in good faith and reason, notwithstanding some of the stuff that's gone on over the last couple of days. But I urge flexibility. I also urge that the athletic director, who the board relies upon, be included in these kinds of decisions.
So-
Actually, they're required to be by regulation.
That may or may not have happened.
I know that lots of districts have struggled with both of these issues. I was really happy when we set up a committee because it's an evolving situation. I didn't realize, although I'm not surprised, that it had stopped working. I'd like to see it reconstituted. I think Tom's comments about reasonableness and flexibility and assuming the best intentions of people as a starting point. You didn't say that, Tom, but I think that was implicit. I think that's where we should proceed. And I'd like personally to know what districts have done over the last couple of years, because some of this is relatively new. The APP process, as I remember, was only instituted in 2015. And the overlap of that issue with increasing number of clubs is more recent than that. And I think the committee was headed in the right direction. I appreciate seeing that charter because the issues that were framed, I think, are the right ones.
Thank you, Jack. Others?
I've got a more basic question of Joe or Roy. How many of our teams don't have enough players to fill a roster and need 7th or 8th graders to participate, to have full teams? So are we doing this because we need literally the bodies to play and practice, or are we doing this because we think that there's a skill level that was going to make us more competitive and more successful?
So actually, if you read the bylaws for the APP process the state puts out, the idea really about APP is not to save a team, it's to really have outstanding athletes that you move up. I will say, I'm looking at one roster right now, and I see on a JV team only 3 8th graders on a JV team. That's just one of the rosters I have right in front of me right now. So I think that would help us complete a roster, but that's 3 on one of the teams that we have currently playing. I think traditionally more of our athletes, it looks like to me from going back at past information, tends to be the individual sports where more children move up. Obviously the skiing and the indoor track and swimming and dive, those sports where every single student participates. So it tends to be that those are not sports we don't make cuts. Seem to have more of the younger students on it. But I will say our soccer teams had some players. Basketball this year, we did not. We had 3 8th graders who played on a modified team, but we didn't have any cuts on that team. So traditionally, what I've seen from the roster, especially for this year, we haven't had a ton that have moved up on the team sports. But the individual sports is where we tend to have more children move up in levels. And that
What has been the effect on the modified program if we're pulling 8th and even 7th graders up to the JV level? Are we seeing enough numbers to support various modified programs, or is that in danger of kind of falling by the wayside? I'm sure it varies on sport, but
correct.
we don't want to lose that.
No, I can see that. Just boys lacrosse modified, we have 27 boys signed up, and girls lacrosse right now we have 23 girls signed up for modified. So those are 2 complete rosters.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have baseball for a JV, so that would not be impacted. And then obviously track and field, and golf and tennis are sports where traditionally many schools don't even have JV programs. We're able to have a JV program in tennis, but we might not have a full roster. But we do have some 7th, 8th graders who help fill out those teams. But those are traditionally looked at more as individual sports rather than a team sport.
Others?
This is John. Hi, Arlene. Thanks for leading this. Look, I think I've been on the board for 6 years, and I think the one topic that energizes people the most in this community is athletics. So here we are talking about 2 important policies, and I think it's very important that we take our time. Arlene, I was glad to hear your discussion points around the process. I think lots of people will have strong opinions about where we head in this direction if we make any changes or if we adopt any new policies. So I definitely think we shouldn't rush to any decisions on this topic. With regard to the policy on middle school participation, as Tom said, I think, Arlene, you and I and Tom participated in a process that was pretty robust. I think it was in 2017, but it was certainly something that was discussed ever since I joined the board 6 years ago. And as we learned, and Tom said, it's very difficult to draft a policy that's clear cut because of all of the exceptions. The list of exceptions to a hard and fast rule would be longer than the rule itself. And so I think, on purpose, the policy is written pretty broadly, that the one we have today. So I think the one we have is a good one. I think it balances the desire to prioritize high school athletics for high schoolers, which is important, but also accommodating the opportunity for middle schoolers to participate if that makes sense. I also believe that it's worked well since we put it in place 4 years ago. So, should we reconsider it or should we assess its effectiveness? I think that's totally fine, but I think we do have a good policy in place. Regarding conflicts, this has also been a hot topic and something we've talked about ever since I've been on the board. We don't have an explicit policy on this, as Roy said, but I would note that we all live with conflicts of interest all the time, and we have to navigate them every day. So I think it may be a good idea to put additional guardrails in process or in place, but ultimately we have to rely on the integrity and decision-making process of the people making the decisions, including our head coaches and the athletic director who runs that department. And I'm comfortable with that. Arlene, as you said at the outset, we have a great set of athletic opportunities, and Roy, we have such a great dedicated group of coaches, assistant coaches, and our athletic director. And we want to continue to be able to attract top talent to help teach our children. So I hope that whatever policies we discuss or consider enacting prioritizes that as well. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we've had a chance to hear from everyone, Roy. I've just been jotting down some notes, and let's see if I've got this right. What I'm hearing is that, first of all, we would like Joe to do an outreach to others within Section 1 to see if other districts have policies on either of the 2 issues, because, flattery, what is it? What do they say, that copying is the best form of flattery? So if we could get those, especially from, I think, Joe, districts that are kind of in our peer group, I think would be most helpful. We have peer groups as we talk about academics, and I think it would be good to have peer group as we talk about athletics.
Arlene, could we get practices as well as policies? A lot of this has to do with how things are implemented.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And the other thing I'm hearing consistently is that we should re-energize the committee that was formed before the pandemic and have them look at both of the issues. I think we might be leaders to try to develop a policy as it relates to the conflict of interest, but I'm with John on the fact that oftentimes safeguards are often effectively used in all walks of life to help us manage conflict, especially when there's an appearance of a conflict as compared to a conflict in fact. You don't like that idea? I'm sorry, Roy.
I wasn't shaking my head at you. Sorry.
Okay. This is how the joys of Zoom and the body language. I'm like, okay.
No. Sorry about that. Nope.
Okay. So I would like to see that committee come together to define the problem, get the right research together, do the debate, and then bring some proposals, if appropriate, to the board. Is that a summary that the board can support? Thumbs up from one. I'll take thumbs up from everybody. Any concerns?
I would just add,
Okay.
Arlene, in the interim, as we're moving
Oh,
forward
please.
with this, that that it'll be Joe's responsibility, if you will, to have those kind of communications with the coaches, and so he understands where the potential conflicts may exist. So there was conversations, if there's coaches that are coaching outside in the clubs, he should know about it. That's all. So he can, be dealing with it effectively. So because it's going to, I hope, this is a process. It'll take a little time, I imagine. But I think we're in a good place.
Just 2 cents. The point here, despite what some of the misinformation that's out there, is to have more transparency, such as the coaches' decisions will ultimately be more supported. The subjective perceptions that are communicated to the board, which kind of started this process, will be dealt with more fairly and completely. These are complicated issues, but there are solutions. And I think that the existing policy, which I'm in favor of tightening up to include more explicit inclusion of the athletic director in them, while maintaining flexibility for the coaches and for the kids. I think that that process yielded a good result, and I don't think that should be thrown out. And I think the same kind of dialogue can resolve the issues with the club world, which is very different than the interscholastic world, and it has different priorities, and it's fine and good. It's just very different. And we need to, I think, from my personal view, we need to have something that protects and promotes our interscholastic teams in coexistence with the club reality. That's all.
Okay. And so Joe and Roy, do you have what you need to move forward?
Sure. And we may reach out to add some new additional or change the committee members up, because, that was over a year ago. So we want to make sure we get the right people that can be productive and have a good sense of things.
All right. So thank you very much for everybody coming to this call on this Monday night. I think it's been a healthy conversation for us. And I do want to just remind us once again about what a very strong high school athletic program we have, and that our goal really is to create an environment that is healthy for our student athletes. And it's probably, I think it's been a tough weekend for them. And to the extent that we can help everybody understand there's a path forward that will be deliberative and thoughtful and have a lot of transparency, that's the best thing for our school and our athletes. So with that, I will call this meeting to an adjournment. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.